Nikita Khrushchev, face the nation. Through the eyes of CBS News film cameras located for the first time inside these walls of the Kremlin on Red Square in Moscow, you are about to see the first secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, Nikita S. Khrushchev, face the nation in his own office in the building housing the USSR Council of Ministers. The questions asked on this program are spontaneous and unrehearsed. In arranging the interview, Soviet authorities were informed of the broad areas of discussion to be covered on the program. These areas were of such scope as to ensure that the panel could ask any question it desired. The language problem has been overcome by simultaneous translation. Unseen and translating Khrushchev's remarks into English for both audience and reporters is Oleg Troyanovsky. Beside Khrushchev, translating the reporters' questions into Russian is Viktor Sukadrev. Both are officials of the Soviet Foreign Ministry. Asking the questions, Daniel Shore, CBS News correspondent in Moscow, and B.J. Cutler, correspondent for the New York Herald Tribune in Moscow. And now, the moderator of Face the Nation from CBS News and Public Affairs, Stuart Novins.
For the past 8 centuries, the Kremlin has been the seat of power here in Russia. The word Kremlin means fortress. And inside these walls, decisions have been made which have shaped the history of Russia and influenced the history of the world. Today, such decisions are still being made here in this building. This is the office of Nikita Khrushchev. Mr. Khrushchev, we're very grateful to you for allowing us to come here. We have many questions that we want to put to you through your interpreter, and I'm very sure that you must have many answers to give us, which will be of great interest to millions of Americans. So if you're ready, sir, let's begin with the first question from Mr. Shore.
Mr. Khrushchev, to open first with a subject which I believe is close to your heart, agriculture. You recently stated that the Soviet Union expects in the next few years to catch up with the United States in the production of milk, butter, and meat. American experts say this is an unrealistic target, especially with regard to livestock, the increase of more than 3 times in livestock. How do you plan to do it?
Unfortunately, not only Americans, but the peoples of other countries, and even people who call themselves scientists, had certain doubts when Lenin and the working class of the Soviet Union took power and called upon the peasantry to support the Soviet power. All these people thought that the Soviet power wouldn't last more than a month. And only one of your countrymen, John Reed, who wrote the book 10 Days Who Shook the World, he had the foresight to say that a new epoch had arrived. I'm saying this to show how the October Revolution was received in America and in the West in general. Our measures to reorganize our backward agriculture, when we started our 5-year plans, no one believed in them and considered us to indulge in fantasies. But 40 years have now gone by since the October Revolution, and the output of our economy has increased 40-fold. We have overtaken such great industrial powers as Britain, France, and Germany, and now occupy the second place, second only to the United States. And now we are faced with the fundamental task of catching up with the advanced capitalist countries as far as production per capita is concerned. First of all, we consider that the conditions are ripe to solve the task of catching up with the United States in the production of milk and meat. As far as milk and butter are concerned, we will be catching up with the United States as far as production per capita is concerned in the next year, 1958. This year, apparently, as far as the total output of milk and butter is concerned, we will be on the level with the United States. But since our population is greater than that of the United States, we require another year to catch up with the United States as far as the production per capita of the population is concerned. As far as meat is concerned, things are difficult, more difficult, true enough. Therefore, as far as the production of meat is concerned, we hope to catch up with the United States, say in 1960 or 1961. I find it difficult to name the exact year because the task will be solved not by me personally, but by our people, by our country as a whole, our farmers, our agronomists, our zootechnicians, etc. And we are convinced that we will be able to solve that task approximately in 1960 or 1961. Your specialists who say that that is impossible have allies among the ranks of our economists too, because some of our economists have been telling me that that task will only be solved in 1975. But we'll laugh at those prophets among our people as we will among your people.
Mr. Cutler?
Mr. Khrushchev, I too am interested in meat. I've heard experts say that no nation in the world has ever been able to increase its meat supply 3.5 times in 4 years. Do you communists have some way of seeing that every cow gives twins?
That is also possible in nature. Not only twins, but triplets are possible in nature. But that is not our main hope. We believe that in trying to solve this task of increasing the production of meat, the main place will be occupied by the production of pork. Because here the possibilities are really tremendous. Also, the production of fowl, of poultry, is very great. As far as the production of cow meat, I believe that in this 5-year period, we will still be behind. And at the present time, we hope that our hope is for the greater production of bacon. We know the British, for instance, are like the bacon very much, and we don't see why the Ukrainians or the Russians should not like bacon too, as do the English. Furthermore, another point I want to make about meat. up to now, large up to now, our cattle has been killed at the age of 1 year usually. Now we want to decrease the number of cattle killed and then increase the number of cattle killed when they will reach 2 years, when they will be 2 years old. In that way, we hope in a few years to increase our resources of cattle available and thus to get a greater amount of cattle to be produced. Of course, by 1960, the production of agricultural production in the United States will also increase, and therefore we will have to make a greater effort to catch up with you too. But as I have already pointed out, it might not be 1960, it might be 1961. We would not complain, nor will our people complain, if that happens in 1961 and not in 1960. What we like already is that we're able to compete with you in this field because yours is a very rich country. And I don't think that you should be sorry about it either, because we realize that you hold first place among all capitalist countries in all fields of production. But now there's a socialist country on hand which is trying to catch up with you, and you can be sure that we will catch up with you.
While we're on agriculture, Mr. Khrushchev, you had a bumper wheat crop last year. How do the prospects look to you for wheat this year?
That is an important point, an important question. Last year we had a very good harvest, but I must say that it was a good harvest only in Siberia and in Kazakhstan. The harvest in the Ukraine, which was formerly called the main grain-producing area in the Soviet Union, was very bad last year. In the central regions of Russia, too, the wheat was destroyed last year by the weather. Therefore, last year was not good all around for us. This year, for the time being, the prospects this year seem to be even better than last year. That is true especially of the Ukraine, the central part of Russia, and the prospects are very good for Siberia and Kazakhstan. The prospects in the Volga region, that is Stalingrad and around Kazan, are somewhat worse. But that region gives less grain to us than the others I mentioned. And therefore, we are not very much concerned about that. But I must say that I know a farmer, and the farmer is calm only when he manages to gather in the harvest and puts it in the storehouses. And therefore, I want to be careful about naming any prospects. But even if this year's harvest should be worse than last year's, it will not prevent us from solving the task as far as the production of meat is concerned.
Mr. Khrushchev, you have spoken about what you call the healthy attitude of competition among the peoples of both our countries. I would like to ask you, sir, going to another field now, in terms of the international relations between the USSR and the United States, particularly as they refer to conditions in Western Europe and in other parts of the world. What do you consider at this time to be the most pressing points that must be solved between the two countries?
I believe that the main thing is to normalize relations between our countries, between all the countries of the world, and first and foremost between the United States and the Soviet Union. This normalization, as I see it, should take place as follows. All restrictions on trade should be removed. We should begin with that. We should remove these restrictions, and you must do away with your Iron Curtain and not be afraid of Soviet cooks arriving in the United States. I don't think they will make any revolution in your country. Therefore, that is the first condition. Then there should be exchanges of cultural delegations. There must be more contacts between our peoples, between businessmen. That is the main thing, I should say. But at the present time, you are practicing discrimination. You are not trading with us. Some of your political leaders believe that in so doing they are doing damage to communism. But you must realize that does little damage to us. On the contrary, that compels us to make an extra effort and produce things at home which would otherwise have been bought from your country. And it will be the same in the future if things go on as they are. But these things create a tense atmosphere, create a lot of nervousness in the world, and make it possible to unbalance people, to speculate on war, to make warlike threats. That is dangerous because the people of the world want peace and want a normal life. That we, for our part, are trying to do all we can to bring about a normal state of things and to bring about peaceful coexistence between countries with different systems. That is to say, between capitalist countries and socialist countries.
Well, Mr. Khrushchev, can we assume from what you have just said, then, that you are prepared to allow Western diplomats more freedom of travel in your country? Can we assume that you will stop jamming broadcasts of the Voice of America? Can we assume that you will take some steps in opening up these contacts you speak of?
I think that as far as restrictions on travel of diplomatic personnel is concerned, I think that if there were a mutual agreement, we would be prepared to improve matters and to do away with these restrictions. These restrictions are elements which have been brought about as a result of the deterioration of relations between our two countries.
Would you say that they were part of your Iron Curtain, Mr. Khrushchev?
We reply to your Iron Curtain in kind, and sometimes we put up a sort of a wooden curtain. Then you asked me about the Voice of America.
Yes.
Our country is a very musical country. And, you know, we have many good singers, both in the past in Russia and now too. Therefore, if it's a good voice, we do not jam it. On the contrary, we want it to be heard all over the country. But if it's a voice which cuts on the ear, then every person switches off one's radio or jams that radio because that voice gets on one's nerves. Therefore, if the voice of America does become the voice of America, because we respect the American people, will not be jammed in our country. But when it is not the voice of America, but a sort of wailing over the radio, supposedly the voice of America, we want. In that case, we want to avoid our people getting the wrong view of the American people.
Is there not a contradiction, Mr. Khrushchev, when you talk about competition economically, and yet you seem not to want to allow competition of ideas? You make the decision instead of allowing the people to decide what they will hear.
You see, to divide us from the people, that is an old tune. An old tune, an old record, an old broken record, and no one is prepared to listen to that record anymore. We believe that there has and will never be another government in this country than the Soviet government, and no other party than the Communist Party, which reflects the desires and the wishes of the people so much. And as far as other countries are concerned, we have no ulterior motives, and therefore the policy that is being pursued by us is not really the policy of the Communist Party, it is the policy of the Soviet peoples. And the Communist Party is only the vanguard of those peoples. And now, is there any contradiction between our statements that we want to compete with you? We do want to compete with you, and in that competition we want to have the most healthy forces come into the forefront. And we believe that our socialist system represents the most healthy elements, because it is the youngest system, the most healthy system. And if you are acquainted with history and know how one social system was changed and another system took its place, you will know that the old capitalist system in our country has been replaced by the socialist system. And I can prophesy that your grandchildren in America will live under socialism. And please don't be afraid of that. Your grandchildren will not understand how their grandparents did not understand the progressive nature of a socialist society. Now, as far as competition between capitalist and socialist ideologies is concerned, we have never made a secret of the fact that there will be an ideological struggle going on between these two ideologies. But we never believe that that is the same thing as a war, because this would be an ideological struggle in which the system, which will have the support of the people, that system will come out on top. At the present time, your American people do not support the Marxist-Leninist theories. They're following the bourgeois political leaders. But is that a reason for war? Is that a reason for any enmity between us and the United States? No, let us live in peace. Let us develop our economy, let us compete, let us trade with each other, let us exchange experience in agricultural, in industry, in the field of culture, And as far as the question of which system will come out on top, let history, let our peoples decide that. I think that is a good way out. We believe that our socialist system will be victorious, but that does not mean under any conditions that we want to impose that system on anyone. We simply believe that the people of each country themselves will come to realize that that system is best for them. That is up to the people concerned to decide. We have no intention of imposing our ideas on anybody. That is what I have to say in reply to the question.
Mr. Khrushchev, to come back to your remark about not being divided, government and the people, it reminds me of a recent statement from Peking, which I believe was also published in Pravda, that in a socialist state there can exist contradictions between the masses and the leaders. I wonder if in republishing that in Pravda, whether the Soviet communists accept this idea and what are the implications of it for the Soviet Union?
Each socialist or capitalist country has its own course of development and its own stages of development. And therefore, socialist countries, we, for instance, our country has been in existence 40 years. The Chinese People's Republic has been in existence 8 years. Therefore, a stage through which we passed does not necessarily have to be repeated in other socialist countries. Then each people have their own habits, customs, history, its own history, and the Communist Party of the country concerned should take that into account, of course. And our Chinese friends have many original ideas which they are implementing in the course of socialist construction in their country. They're giving birth to new ideas too, which take into consideration the specific conditions in China. We look upon that as perfectly normal, and we lend our support to many of these things. We publish these ideas in our press, but each one has to base oneself on the conditions existing in one's own country. There is no contradiction with any Marxist-Leninist ideas in this respect.
But are you saying then these contradictions do not exist in the Soviet Union today?
We believe that we have no contradiction of that nature.
Mr. Khrushchev, you've recently said that the United States is definitely planning war against the Soviet Union. Is this really the belief that underlies your policies? Is this really the belief that underlies the policies of the Soviet Union?
That is not my view. I simply repeated what your political leaders have been saying, and your generals, especially your admirals. God knows how many speeches are being made in your country saying in how many hours the Soviet Union can be destroyed by the power of the United States. We don't indulge in any such things. Our political leaders don't make speeches trying to prove that we can destroy the United States. That would be stupid on our part.
I recall that Marshal Zhukov has said things like that. There's a difference between capacity and desire.
You must be more accurate in your memory. I don't think Zhukov said anything of the sort. Tell me when and where Zhukov said that we want to destroy America.
Not
Never.
want.
What we said was this, and I don't deny that we have been saying that if some American generals and politicians say they can destroy the Soviet Union, that if the means of warfare now enable one country to destroy another, then that second country can probably destroy the first one too. And in that respect, we are sure of ourselves. And if any man, which I would call a madman, should unleash war, we would have to take our steps. It would be a great calamity for mankind. I have been reproached with changing my mind. In that once I said that in a new war capitalism would be destroyed. I can repeat that, but it would be a terrible war, and therefore what we want is to avoid a military conflict, but we want to compete with capitalism by peaceful means, economically and otherwise. And as far as the United States is concerned, the people of America themselves will come to realize that capitalism is no good for them.
Mr. Khrushchev, you've just said that a future war would destroy capitalism. Is it your theory that a future war would not destroy communism also?
No, it would not. It would bring tremendous calamities to the whole of mankind, tremendous losses in life and material values, but still mankind would not be destroyed, and since mankind would continue to live, that means that the ideas of mankind would continue to live, and the immortal idea of mankind is that of communism. But that is a very high price, a price, and it would be a tremendous calamity both for capitalist and socialist countries, and therefore we have to live on one planet. You prefer the capitalist system, we prefer the socialist system. We'll continue to have ideological differences. We'll continue to compete, but we must live on this one planet. As a matter of fact, we believe that we could have friendly contacts with you. We think that is possible, even though there would be ideological differences, because there are many questions which unite us, and we would readily cooperate with the people of the United States.
There's one thing, Mr. Khrushchev, which I constantly fail to understand. How can you speak of coexistence with a country if you really believe that this country is planning a war against the Soviet Union?
But what can we do about it? We would prefer that you would not plan that war against us, but you are, and we believe that you are planning that war. But you must know that such a war would be a very awful thing, and therefore those plans might not be implemented. Therefore, if there is coexistence, if you show a desire to live in peace with us, then we, as well as you, would be able to alleviate the burden of taxation. We would be able to switch our labor reserves from the production of things which do not go to the good of mankind. We want peace very much, and we want friendship with the American people. We want friendship with Americans, not in order to have our two great powers combine against other countries, but because we think that friendship between our two countries would go to the good of other countries. In that case, for instance, Luxembourg would hardly represent a threat to us. And therefore, friendship between us two would be to the good of all the peoples of the world. I would like to be very emphatic about that, so that all this technical equipment of yours could translate it for your American people, our desire for friendship.
Can I bring this down to a concrete question, because this leads towards disarmament? The United States has come back to the resumed disarmament talks in London with a proposal for what is called a small, measured step toward disarmament. We know that the Soviet Union has been more in favor of a total and immediate ban on hydrogen atom bomb tests and weapons, and the question of control has made it very difficult. Do you see any hope for an agreement on the basis of the current American approach, a first small step?
For the time being, I know not of the step that the United States is prepared to take, because Mr. Stassen has not yet put forth his proposals. But we are quite prepared to limit ourselves to some small step instead of going after a comprehensive agreement at once, so that that small step might lead to something bigger. We, for our part, have taken steps to reduce our armed forces by 1,800,000 men. We have reduced our armed forces in eastern Germany by some 30,000 men. We have given back to Finland the base we had in that country. We have done a great deal, we believe, to achieve agreement on disarmament. But for the time being, we have not seen a mutual step taken by either the United States, France, or Britain. We're very sorry about that.
After reducing your armed forces by 1,800,000 men, how many men remained in the Soviet armed forces?
I didn't know that you would raise that question. It did not figure in the program that was presented to me on your part. Therefore, I did not ask our Minister of Defense about that, and I don't know any accurate figure, and I would not want to name any figures that are not accurate before the representatives of a great power like the United States, but we, in general, are prepared to reply to that question.
Let me ask you a question in connection with disarmament, which has puzzled me for a long time. The Soviet position in discussing atomic tests and bombs is that all atomic and hydrogen explosions can be detected. If that's the Soviet position, then why is it that the Soviet government has not given notice or even announced afterward the last 5 tests conducted in this country?
What will that give to mankind? Nothing. what difference is there whether, as long as there is an explosion, the air has been poisoned, and the people of the world will not gain by anything if such registration is made beforehand. We prefer a more fundamental approach. Let us put an end to these tests, to these explosions. And some powers register these explosions not because they're so good, but because the nature of their territory is such that they have to make these explosions in international waters. And if they explode their bombs without previous warning, that might harm the planes flying over that part of the world or the ships sailing there, and that would create a real scandal. If your territory made it possible for you to explode those tests in the United States, you would not warn of those tests beforehand. There are people now who want to avoid the proposal to put an end to all explosions by switching it towards these proposals of registration and warnings. I think that is empty talk to distract the attention of the people from the direction in which their attention should run. Therefore, our proposal is to put an end to all these tests to abolish hydrogen and atomic weapons, to limit armed forces, etc. Let us have real steps in that field instead of empty polemics, all sorts of verbal exercises and debates.
We lack the time now for the kind of long discussion I would like to have on this subject, but just one small factual point. The atomic tests on the continental United States have been announced, including the ones forthcoming in the state of Nevada.
Mr. Khrushchev, may I move to a related area to what we're talking about now, and that is the question of Western Europe. There have been various proposals, as you know, sir, for providing certain conditions under which troops would be withdrawn, and these questions also deal with the reunification of Germany. I would like to ask you, what does the Soviet government believe now to be the conditions under which it would feel sufficiently secure to withdraw from the countries in which they are now situated? Yes.
Before replying to this, I would like to reply to Mr. Shore. I already said that your territory is not wide enough for explosions to be made in your country without previous registration. And these registrations are really only misleading, because you are compelled to register those explosions because of the small territory of your country, comparatively small. Now, about our security. We feel ourselves sufficiently secure and are not afraid of anything. We do not want a war, but a war might be imposed upon us, and if it is, our people will fight with even greater enthusiasm and a loyalty in defense of their country. But in order to prevent that, what steps should be taken? Why couldn't the United States and the other countries withdraw their troops from Western Germany, from the other countries of the West, from France, Italy? Where else have you got troops? Turkey, Greece, perhaps? While we would withdraw our troops from Eastern Germany, from Warsaw, from Poland, that is to say, from Hungary, from Romania. We have no troops anywhere else. I think that would be very useful, a useful first step to test the goodwill of the two sides and to establish a good atmosphere which would not smell of war, but which would lead to good, friendly relations that could be brought about between our two countries. That is what we have been talking about, and we're quite prepared to do that.
Would that be included in an air inspection system to control the execution of such an agreement?
You see, that is a different matter. We would be withdrawing our troops from foreign territories. But at the same time, this inspection would be imposed upon foreign territories too. Really, this inspection is a desire to peek into the bedroom of one's neighbor when he puts down the curtains of his room. But if you do want that, let's come to an agreement about this inspection, but under certain mutual conditions. What would these conditions be? These conditions have been put forth by our representative Zorin in London. The United States promised to provide a reply to our proposals on disarmament. We're expecting your counter-proposals. It's difficult for me to say whether your counter-proposals will be acceptable to us or not.
Well, Mr. Khrushchev, when you speak about withdrawing of American troops from Western Europe, you're talking about withdrawing over a period of 3,000 miles. When you speak about withdrawing Russian troops from East Germany, they can go back 3,000 miles. When you speak of withdrawing Russian troops from East Germany, this is a matter of pulling back to 2 hours away. Now, as a realistic man, wouldn't you say that some kind of assurance of mutual trust might be forthcoming here? What is Russia prepared to do?
But your arithmetic is not quite correct. When you say, when you speak about the distance of withdrawal, I would say that your withdrawal will be less than ours, because Britain, for instance, is across the channel from the continent. The United States is across the ocean. Now, how long does a ship take from the United States to Germany or France? And at the same time, how long would a train troop go from, say, Irkutsk or Vladivostok in our country to Eastern Germany? And you will see that the distances are about the same. Therefore, and furthermore, when we speak about disarmament, there is confidence needed. We should not look upon each other as robbers, but we should look upon each other as honest people. We're prepared to give you our word, and we're prepared to afford the means of control. We're agreed to have control inspection posts established to check up on the agreement, and we believe that those conditions exclude the possibility of any sudden attack of one side on the other. That is the realistic view I take of the matter.
Mr. Khrushchev, do you have any fear that if you withdrew your troops from certain states in Eastern Europe, that those countries would all remain communist?
It's a fable. You are probably contaminated with this talk too. You seem to think that the communist system in some country can be held up by our armed forces, but I wouldn't defend a communist system of that kind. The communist system must be based on the will of the people. And if the people should not want that system, then that people should establish a different system. And for that reason, we have no fear of withdrawing our troops from any country of Eastern Europe or from Eastern Germany, and we're certain that the people themselves will defend their system even better without that.
Mr. Khrushchev, you are convinced in your own mind that in every country with a communist regime today, that regime rests on the will of the people?
Absolutely. Absolutely. How can it be otherwise? Look now. Look how Chiang Kai-shek is holding the people of Taiwan in his hands. And look what the people of Taiwan have done when they don't like that regime. The Americans have given Chiang Kai-shek $6 billion to hold Chiang Kai-shek on the continent, and all those American arms have been transferred by Chiang Kai-shek from the Americans over to Mao Zedong. And who did all that? It has all been done by the people of China, because the Chiang Kai-shek regime did not correspond to the will of the Chinese people. Or look at the regime that existed in Tsarist Russia. The revolutionaries were executed by the people, but the people rose up and established a new system. After the October Revolution, a great many countries started a war against us, including you, Americans, and also the British, the French, the Greeks. And look what happened. The people of our country pushed you all from out of our territory and established a new communist system in our country, because that system has the support of the people. Or look at the Germans. They penetrated into our country as far as the Volga. They hoped that the people of this country would revolt. But what was the result? Hitler's armies have been routed, Hitler has been buried, while our people are developing their economy and gaining one success after another. We're catching up with you as far as the production of butter and milk is concerned, and we will catch up with you as far as the other fields of production are concerned too, and we shall go on to establish a communist society in our country.
We are not here, Mr. Khrushchev, to argue with you, but to get your opinions. But since you have raised America's troubles in Formosa, and this is a frank discussion, I only wanted to ask you, how long do you think the Kadar regime would last without Soviet troops and tanks in Hungary?
Let's have a test. Why don't you withdraw your troops from Germany and France, and we will withdraw ours from Germany, Poland, and Hungary, and you will see that the Kadar regime, which is the people's regime in Hungary, will flourish for ages to come. Where the working class has won power, it will not yield that power to the exploiters, but will rather develop their economy and their culture. That is what the Kadar regime is. It is not the Kadar regime really, because Kadar is a servant of the Hungarian people.
Mr. Khrushchev, we don't have very much time left, and I would like to use some of the remaining time to ask you this question. What great step do you think now the Russian Soviet government is prepared to take in order to ease some of these tensions that we've been speaking about and in order to approach a better understanding among the countries of the world?
My view is, and I'm sure that we're constantly making those steps, but if one side makes a step and the other does not reciprocate in kind, there will not be any relaxation in tension, because this relaxation is not a one-way street. A reciprocal step is necessary on the part of the United States, Britain and France, and we will not remain in debt in that case. Our most radical steps have been proposed. We have made proposals on disarmament. We suggest that restriction on trade be discarded. We suggest that the United States lower the Iron Curtain and start a widespread cultural exchange. I find it difficult to add anything else to that now. If the United States were to reciprocate in kind, we would have great progress.
May I ask one more question, sir? Does the history of the last year since World War II indicate at all where the Soviet Union may have been at fault or may have made mistakes in international relations which have led to some of these tensions?
You see, I don't know what mistakes you have in mind. I'm prepared to admit that both sides might have had a more reasonable approach, and there might not have been that deterioration in relations. But still, I think that the deterioration that has taken place represented a desire on the part of the capitalist countries to test us. Because when your political leaders say that they're prepared to deal with us only after the liberation of the so-called enslaved peoples, meaning the socialist countries in Europe, well, I don't want to argue about what you think slavery is, but I want to say that we look upon the capitalist society as slavery. And we think that the peoples living under a capitalist system are living under capitalist slavery. If we start arguing on this basis, the results will hardly be good.
I am sure that we are all in agreement that such an argument would produce not very much in terms of this discussion, but we are most grateful to you for your presence on Face the Nation. We wish to express our appreciation for the cooperation which we have had from your associates, and particularly I am grateful to your interpreters, Mr. Viktor Sukhadrev and Mr. Oleg Troyanovsky. Our thanks also to today's panel of newsmen, to Mr. Daniel Shore of CBS News, Mr. B.J. Cutler of the New York Herald Tribune. This is Stuart Novins. May we invite you to join us next week at this time for another edition of Face the Nation. Our program today originated inside the Kremlin in Moscow.
CBS Television has presented Face the Nation, filmed inside the Kremlin and produced by Ted Ayers, with Ted Koop, Robert Hess, Cyril Bliss, Frank Binney, and Beryl Denzer. Today on the CBS Public Affairs program, you saw in his Moscow office the first secretary of the Soviet Communist Party, Nikita Khrushchev, answering the unrehearsed questions of American correspondents on Face the Nation. Next week, Senator William F. Nolan, Republican of California, will face the nation.